Good people, this has got to be one of the most impressive cases of this year so far, but also one of the most disappointing in a really long time. And this is coming from Cooler Master with their legendary HAF series. The HAF 500 II is exactly what you would expect in terms of airflow performance. This thing on air is beating other cases that I've tested with the same configuration that are using liquid coolers. Let that sink in. The air in here is absolutely monstrous because of those two 220mm fans at the front, the 180mm at the back. So yes, the volume of air that's passing through your hardware is absolutely insane. But the most impressive part is that it can do so without the need to go full speed. Unfortunately, if this case was to be released without the fans, without the hero highlight, and with just like standard 140s maybe in the front or something, it would be a complete flop. Let me show you why. You know, we were joking with the guys that this case was released to please the tech Jesus himself because of the insane airflow, but at the same time, we've already seen similar approaches from Fractal Design with the Torrent series in particular, with that massive open front panel, giant fans. So the formula is already there. It's just how you package everything around it. Now for my airflow testing, I'm doing a few things. I am noise normalizing to 40 decibels, which is that comfortable sweet spot, not too loud, not too quiet, giving us just the right amount of performance. And I'm also modernizing the hardware. I'm also testing for an air cooler and a 360 AIO, just to give you an idea of which direction you should lean into. So starting with the gaming benchmark, AIO versus air, you can see that CPU is slightly cooler with the AIO, but the air configuration favors VRMs and our SSD controller, which is kind of cool, but everything else stays the same. GPU temperature, clocks, frame rates even. So whichever cooler you decide to go with, this thing can handle it in the gaming department. As for blended performance, that kind of flips, where an AIO is definitely better on basically all fronts. Better CPU temperature, better GPU temperature, higher clock speeds, although not significantly higher, but still, those front fans deliver so much air that I would not worry, regardless if you're going for a CPU cooler or an AIO, but keep in mind that an AIO is slightly better performing for a really hot running CPU. Jumping into the gaming benchmarks again versus the other cases, you can see it is significantly cooler both on the CPU and the GPU. I even ran the fan speeds at full blast here on the HAF just to see if we're losing any headroom, and we are not losing any headroom, which is the most interesting part of this entire benchmark, is that the fact that we can run these fans at 40 decibels and you're not gaining any more performance versus if you were to run them at full speed. Like 1 degree difference, who cares, you know? But it is very impressive that we're running the CPU at almost 10 degrees cooler on the HAF versus the Antec C6, and the GPU sitting at a comfortable 60 degrees Celsius means, you know, you have plenty of headroom for maybe overclocking or additional tweaking here and there. Switching to an air cooler, and things are even more impressive, especially when we compare to what is capable versus the Frame 4000 and the Antec C6, just because we have really good airflow delivery here at the quiet operation. So CPU and GPU are basically neck and neck around that 60-degree mark. It's interesting to notice just how much worse the airflow is with our Frame 4000, even though we have a similar front airflow delivery and everything exiting from the back. But the C6, I guess the extra airflow from the bottom directly for the GPU is a significant cooling advantage here, but still not enough to beat the HAF. But when we look at CPU temperatures, man, what a difference. 15 degrees Celsius versus the Antec C6, which is not an airflow case at all. We have glass at the front and only bottom front intake basically. So yeah, it's kind of a hot box there by default, but just to see how much cooler the CPU is on HAF versus the Frame 4000 again, shows you that it's not a matter of having more fans at the front, it's about giving us maybe wider airflow, which is what these front fans deliver. Now, when we look at the clock speeds for the GPU, for example, everything stays the same story on the CPU clocks and even the frame rate. And I'm questioning whether or not I chose the right hardware for the case testing moving forward. Moving on to blended performance, while we're still with the air cooler, you can see the gap starts to close between all cases. It's still performing very well, but it shows that, you know, taxing out that CPU with so much heat, we're running into a bottleneck on the actual CPU cooler and not so much when it comes to the airflow. Especially when we're running this thing at full speed, you can see there's no difference. When we switch to a 360 AIO, the gap closes between all cases, which is not a bad thing per se, but just shows that, again, we're reaching the limit of the CPU cooler and not so much the airflow. We are running at 3 degrees cooler, which is pretty significant when we're dumping so much heat onto the CPU, and when we run the thing at full blast, it does nothing. So again, we are reaching that limit on the CPU cooler. The case is ginormous, as you can see, and it is very wide to support those massive fans in the front and the rear. And I've never seen a 180 at the rear before. Like maximum I've seen is a 140. So CPU tower heatsink clearance is absolutely massive. Don't even worry about that. Now, Cooler Master did the right thing when it comes to the RPM of these fans. You're looking about 1100 for the front and about 1600 for the rear. The acoustic profile when you're running these fans at full power is only around 45 decibels, which is not loud at all, and lowering them to about 50% volume, you get absolutely quiet performance under 38 decibels while still moving a ton of air. And these fans are truly mighty, 40mm thickness, and the front one's delivering over 200 CFM, while the rear one's also a 40mm thickness, but around 160 CFM. Just in case you're thinking about swapping out those front fans for something else, please don't do that, but we don't have any optional rail system included by default, and if those fans break, you cannot buy them separately right now. You can relocate the master rail system from the top to the front, but just don't do that. Keep the fans stock as they are. And the master rail system at the top is pretty clever in theory. We have these small metal bits that you can slide around on the rail to fit your fan sizes, 6 of them total per rail, and you can fit 120, 140, 160, up to 180 up here. The rails can be removed completely, although we have 3 different size screws to do that task, and the entire top panel can be completely removed for easier assembly. My only gripe here is that the rail system is not labeled in any way, not giving you 120 mounts or 140 mounts like little stamps by default, so you just have to align those things based on what you're installing. As for the rear fan mount, it is only for 180mm fans, no accessory brackets included to downsize, which makes sense. The only redeeming high quality element on the inside is the anti-GPU sag bracket. It feels really strong. You have 2 of them, so you can either sandwich the GPU, or if you have multiple graphics cards, whew, lucky you. Now, Cooler Master's approach to storage, I find a little bit hilarious because it is not optimized in any way. We almost have like half a kilo of metal in here to support 3 hard drives or 6 SSDs. I mean, that's a little bit unoptimized for all the material. Look at Fractal Designs, for example, the simple dual strips that can go into the SSD mount or the 3.5-inch mount, depending on what you're installing. So Cooler Master, please fix. The interior layout is dated. You can feel that. There's no BTF support, first of all. There's nothing fancy on the power supply shroud, just ventilation and our plastic shroud for guiding the airflow towards the GPU. It is magnetic and it is removable. The case supports eATX motherboards, no problem, with this cable cover that can slide closer or farther away from the motherboard. By default, you have to move it out installing your standard ATX motherboard because otherwise it doesn't fit, which is easy to do. A simple thumb screw and a little locking latch at the top. The cable cover is high enough to cover your RAM, which is why we have those cutouts in front of it to allow some of that airflow to cool our RAM. I do have some concerns for build quality in some sections. For example, the very last piece of frame above our top PCIe slot is just way too thin. It can easily be bent, and it was already bent when it arrived to my studio. I do like the logo ventilation pattern, but it also makes the metal quite thin and flexible. And speaking of flexible, the front logo on the case sits on this plastic column, and it's just way too flexible. I feel like it's just a small nudge from just snapping away. The top dust filter is built in, so you just remove that and clean it together with the top panel, which is not a problem, but the edges of that filter are not trimmed and they can be easily ripped. And our rear dust filter for the power supply is nice and big and that high performance kind again. Fortunately, there's still plenty to like with the HAF 500 Mark II. Like, I love the front panel design and how aggressive it is. The removable dust filter behind it is that fine performance thing, and which is going to be necessary of how much air is getting moved through that. The I/O is also at the very top, making sure the front panel is completely clean with fast USB-C speeds, and I just wish that the start text wasn't there. Come on. The toolless side panels at the top that can all be secured with a thumb screw. Although Cooler Master, what's up with the tiny little plastic bit that keeps falling out of the thumb screw? You can't get that right? Seriously? Why is this not a captive thumb screw? And this is also one of the reasons why this could have been launched 5 to 10 years ago, because at the back, There's absolutely nothing interesting or innovative. Sure, a few Velcro straps here and there. There's 3 in the front that are mostly useless, and this cover idea is great, right? Like cover, hide the cables, make everything flat, but the spacing at the bottom is so little. Like I can't imagine if you have tons of thick cables here for 24 pin and your GPU connectors, for example. The same thing for the top, like just this was not designed properly. I would just throw this away immediately. And then when you remove it, you're like, oh, wait a second. There's not a single cable tie point in this entire section behind there. So all this is just floating. This is such a horrible design. Also notice we have a fan hub at the top for 6 fans and their respective 5-volt addressable connectors, which is great. But for this case, where the front fans are running at a different RPM versus the back, I find this completely useless. So I wish that this was not included at all and give us a cheaper price point. And from the pricing point of view, you're looking at under $200 with incredible performance, but then it doesn't have the other pillars supporting the overall balance of the enclosure, which is kind of a shame. Now, the story with the HAF is interesting because at Computex, they said that they designed the frame around the fans, which makes sense when it comes to mounting them. But when you look inside, you're like, this feels kind of dated. And I don't know if that's going to matter to a lot of people who want that absolutely insane cooling performance, both on the air cooler, on an AIO, for the GPU, and a CPU heavy benchmark in a gaming environment. Like it just beats out literally everything that's on the market right now, which is pretty crazy. And I hope it's going to encourage other companies to look into massive, low RPM, high CFM airflow delivery from the front or from other points of view to give us something that is going to be competing on this level, but has a slightly more modern touch. Because right now, the HAF for me feels like a really awesome, like beating performer, but I wouldn't choose this from the point of view of like the user experience. I feel like that is lacking heavily. And on that note, let me know if you agree. I'm Dmitry. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.